Hello guys. So what's happening is that today it's getting very confusing that would you be able to get a job in the future or not? What is the AI market? What are the opportunities that we have and how do you prepare for them? And I guess the main reason behind it is because there is a massive shift that is happening from the past to the future. In the past, we all used to look at the database, the front end, back end, etc., etc., and then we used to develop skill by maybe learning some framework or database. But now it is all about AI. And the most confusing thing that's happening is that if you go on x.com Twitter, you will see that a lot of people are going to tell you to do the vibe coding, which probably means that do the prompt engineering and then do and develop the products, right? At the end of day, it is basically you somebody telling you that what you are going to do is you are going to go on the terminal, you're going to write down a basic prompt that you would want to build out this application, and then it is going to do it for you. But this is not good enough for you to actually get a job, because in order for you to get a job you need to have specific skills, and then you need to be able to prove them somehow as well. And then proving those skills as a prompt engineer is not going to be that helpful. So what you need to do is you need to have some kind of a mechanism, some kind of a strategy, or some kind of basic skills that are there in the demand in the market that you need to develop, and you could use that to actually get a job. So today what you're going to look at is the AI engineer. Like, what does the AI engineer basically means? Because what's happening is that most people are confusing the AI engineer with the prompt engineer, right? The AI engineer today is equally, what people are telling is that, okay, what you can do is you can write down the prompt, and then through the prompt it is going to develop the application for you, develop the software for you, and that is how you become the AI engineer, because you're able to develop the products through AI. But that is basically at the very beginner level, right? At the very beginner level, you might be like, you are able to use cursor to develop the clone of some application. But the problem is when you actually deploy it in production, it might not work out. When you want to integrate some of the AI first feature into it, it might not work out. Try to do one thing, try to replicate 11 labs, try to replicate the Adobe generating images for you, or try to replicate the open source models that are there right now. Try to develop them from scratch. What you will experience is pain, basically, that you still need to understand the concepts that are there, the AI fundamental concepts. Otherwise, you won't be able to maybe develop the AMA generation, maybe develop the video generation from scratch, or maybe develop the models from scratch. And the reason behind that is not that you have to develop these models from scratch. That is not the idea. The idea is that you are able to understand how this model works. And one guy who actually got me inspired was Andrej. So there is this one video that Andrej has, which is about how to build GPT-2 from scratch. This video basically is 4 hours long, right? What I'm going to do is, I watched it once, I'm going to rewatch it and then create a video on how to use GPT-2, or how to actually create GPT-2 from scratch. What I'm trying to do is, I'm maybe going to train it on Aryabhatta, or maybe some Indian author. He trained it on Shakespeare. So what basically you need to understand is that how these models actually work underneath, right? Because if you want to get the job at OpenAI, if you want to get the job at Anthropic, or there are going to be about maybe dozens of companies that are going to be there in the future, which are micro versions of OpenAI or Anthropic, right? Maybe they will try to target the text generation, maybe they will try to target the specific industry such as lawyer, agriculture, and they will try to solve that specific problem. But the way for them to solve that wouldn't just be that to simply use GPT-2 or Anthropic models and then try to use them to actually do something, right? Because Anthropic and Cloud are already doing it for them. They don't need to go to your product to do the same chat that they can just do on the chat GPT, right? There has to be a unique edge, and those unique edges going to be in the specific domains. So what's going to happen is, first of all, as AI engineer, you need to actually understand how this model works. And the best way to actually learn how this model works is to build GPT-2 from scratch. We are going to have a video on it. This is going to be the large video. Maybe we will do that in series, right? Comment down if you are more interested, and then I can send you the Discord link where maybe all of us can get together and then try to create it together as well as a class, or where maybe people can help each other as well. So first of all, you have to learn how this model works, not for you to actually develop the GPT-5, but in order for you to understand how these models behave, right? How these models are built. And what you will know is that there is actually a very specific mechanism behind it. It all started from the transformer architecture. Transformer architecture was what was introduced in Google DeepMind. So to start with, basically all of the innovation, the most of the innovation you can say has actually happened from this team, Google DeepMind. They came up with the idea of transformers architecture. Before this, all of those innovation in AI was actually related to neural networks, right? Which basically meant that you can do the prediction, but they have to go through tokens sequentially, I believe. And then what they did is that, okay, you don't really need to actually go through all the neurons sequentially, which basically means that you don't need to look at all the tokens sequentially and then replicate the result. You can look at all of the tokens at the same time and then use that to factor in the attention, right? And that attention is what is going to support these models. And they came up with a transformer architecture, and then they published this paper which was called "Attention is All You Need." This is from where it all started. This is from where the basic version of transformer architecture was basically published. This was the basic diagram, you can say, and this is from where everything started. GPT-2 is basically some version of this. You can say the transformer architecture. They just changed and changed it a little bit, but most of it is actually, you can say, inspired from this, right? Most probably after it, like now with the GPT-4, GPT-5, they might have actually changed a lot of things, but this is the basic fundamentals that you have to know. There are going to be separate classes or courses that I think we will try to set up for that. And most probably, I think if you guys are interested, I think it will be really good if you can just set up the Discord channel to actually talk about all of these things, right? So the thing that you need to learn about is the transformer architectures, right? Transformer architecture. And once you actually understand it, how the transformer architecture works, you can try to look into different platforms, AI platforms, right? One is called the image generation, which is called the GPT-2 models, which are the ChatGPT image, right? Then the video models, you can say Midjourney, and then you can look at the text generation models, which are basically ChatGPT itself, right? So for image generation, I think ChatGPT product works good. For video generation, if you are interested, you can look into Midjourney, and then you can try to maybe follow some of their research papers. So they really have good articles and research papers around how to generate the videos. And what's interestingly happening is, just because now they understand the fundamentals of everything that is there with the video generation, they are now getting into medical as well. I think they are getting into healthcare by doing ultrasonic CT scans, which is basically the full body ultrasound, right? And my theory is what's happening is that just because these people who have started understanding all of these fundamentals from scratch, and they were able to build out initial version of video generation models, which were better than, let's say, what ChatGPT was doing or what Anthropic was doing. They were able to understand the fundamentals, and they were able to improve it in order for them to now apply it on other markets such as medical, etc., etc. So yeah, try to actually understand how all of these things works, right? What does image generation means? What does the video generation means? What does the text generation means? And then try to apply all of these things in building some application, right? That is where the application layer comes in. Now the application layer is going to be what the consumer is going to use or see, right? This is where you might have most of companies ready, let's say, in the market. If you want to go and get a job, or even if you want to go and create a startup, it is going to be a little bit easier for you to start the application company than the model generation company, because model generation company would require you to have a massive fund, because basically what you would need to do is you would need to have a lot of money, right, in order for you to train these models. So that's why I say that you don't need to generate the GPT-5 models. You can just generate the GPT-2 model or the basic version of transformer architecture, and then try to figure out how these things actually work so that you can apply it, the fundamental rules, by building the application layer, right? So now when it comes to application layer, basically what's going to happen is you will not be having your own model, right? You will be using some of the models that are in the market, such as ChatGPT or DeepSeek, right? And you can use these models by some of the companies such as OpenRouter, right? You don't need to go in and do all of the subscription for all of these platforms. You can just go and get one subscription of OpenRouter, and OpenRouter is going to give you access to all of these platforms, and then you can integrate that into your application layer, right? Once you integrate that into your application layer, what you will realize is that ChatGPT, DeepSeek, all of these platforms are basically just a single text generation platforms, right? They are just the text generation platforms. For each command, you will have to give it some payload, and then you are going to get the response. But the experience is not going to be similar as ChatGPT application itself, the product that they have, and it is not going to be the same as Cloud Code itself. And what you will realize is that ChatGPT application itself and the Cloud Code platform itself has a lot of harness built in. What does the harness means? You can have the access to ChatGPT and DeepSeek through OpenRouter, right? But if you want to continue the chat, and then if you want it to remember it, that what did you say, let's say 10 attempts before, you need memory for that. And if you want now your application layer to have access to some of the files offline or on your system, it can be coding files, or it can be some of the CSV files you maybe need for some operation, you will realize that you need to give it the tool access in order for you to actually perform some operations, right? So what you will realize is that it is very complex to actually build out even the application layers. And it doesn't just require for you to have access to models, but you need to understand how the memory works, right? And then what you need to understand is that how the tools work, right? And then you also need to understand how the prompt engineering works. Prompt engineering at this point will be actually specs driven. So prompt engineering can actually be many. So you can see specs, you can see agents, right? So specs basically mean that which product you are developing. Does it mean that you want to talk to your customer in customer support tone, or do you want to talk to your customer in support tone? So basically all of that criteria is going to be part of your prompts, is going to be part of your specs, agents, etc. And then what you will realize is that, okay, you need other layers as well on the top of it. For example, evals layer, which basically you are going to use to test out these applications, that are they working properly, do they give wrong response to your users or not, right? And how do you actually, let's say, do the observability, which basically means that do they return any error when they return the response to customers, right? So you need to add the observability layer on the top of it too. And if you are somebody like Midjourney, right? Midjourney might be actually using some of the open source models, but there are other things that they can do. I think they understand diffusion much, they understand inference engineering, right? So if you want to be, let's say, the application layer that can scale, you need to understand how the inference works, right? How the diffusion works, and then how you are able to, let's say, this one is, let's say, if you want to search something for the memory, right? What you need to know is that how the RAG works, right? There are different methods for that. So in the RAG, basically retrieval augmented generation, I believe that's the full form. So RAG, if you search about it, you can learn and read about it. So retrieval augmented generation, there are many concepts of how the RAG works, right? There are many ways for you to do the RAG. So there is a simple version of RAG, and then there is going to be the graph RAG, and there are the different kind of, let's say, applications as well. For example, what what Cloud Code does is Cloud Code actually create files of the memories on the system and then give it access to your model and then model is able to read those files. So they don't build out any kind of a database. They just create the files, and then model is able to search in those files and then figure out what it needs to do, right? So there are different methods for you, but I think RAG is going to be the very basic fundamental that you need to learn, which basically means how you are able to store the memory that is there from the user chat, right? And then how you're able to access it later on. The tool generation is basically how you're able to give access to not only the files but also to the APIs. You might be having some services running on the backend as well, and then you want to give those services access to your models. The prompt are basically, which is going to be the key, because prompt is what's going to help you let's say build out the design layer or the UI layer, because in the text generation there is no UI, right? Basically the text itself is the UI or the interface, and then in the text itself you have to tell model how to behave, how to perform, how to create different steps, how to tell customer to do and perform some of the different actions, right? And then evals are going to help you do the testing, and observability is what you need to deploy in order for you to figure out that nothing is breaking in the system. So this is how and what you need to do basically if you want to, let's say, be the AI product engineer. This is not just going to be about prompt engineering. This is going to be about all of these things that are there. And now what's happening is, let's say once you are able to understand all of these things, right, what now you need to do is you need to how do you build out the box in here? I don't know, but let me delete this one. But basically now you need to do is, if you see that everything is actually wrapped around model, right? Everything is wrapped around model, and model is what's the bigger model is basically something that you need to harness, right? You might hear this thing about a lot, which is called harness engineering. Harness engineering basically means that you are able to use the model, and then you're able to provide model the environment, the skills that it needs so that it can perform at its best while using the same model. If you have different specs, if you have different prompts, if you have different kind of a memory layer, and then if you have a different kind of a loop that it runs in, it can actually change how the accuracy of your application is working, right? And then for that, what you need to do is you need to learn about harness engineering. So harness engineering is basically going to be that how do you actually harness your model to have a good accuracy. And then the way for you to do that is actually doing all of these things. And then once you, let's say, are able to get out some results out of observability and evals, right? Let's say you're able to get out the results from these sections, right? Now you have run the evals, now you have run the observability, and then now you have some results from the customer as well. You can actually feed it back into harness, and then you can actually now create a new application layer. You can call it V0.2, which is going to perform better for you, right? Because now you have results. The results might be that when customer asks for insurance, you are not able to tell him how to do the insurance in different countries. So you just write down one very basic spec which says that if customer asks about insurance from different companies, then you are able to tell them, and then maybe forward them to the right number, the right email, or with the right answer, right? So yeah, so that's what you need to learn. And then I actually wrote down a big post about it. It's 1500 lines. You don't need to read all of it, but to give you the gist of it, basically I'm going to paste it in the YouTube description if you ever want to read it, right? I would recommend you to read it. I think what's happening is that first there was assembly language. When assembly language was there, you probably needed to have 500 lines of code, and then the C language came in, and then now you can do the same thing in 5 lines of code. And then at that time engineer must have said that now the programming is a solved problem. But what's happened is that C introduced new systems, new platforms which were more complex in nature, and there were more C engineers than the assembly engineers. And then after C language there were like a modern version C++, and then there was a JavaScript, right? JavaScript basically changed the whole industry. And then there came in React, and then every time it was that, okay, now things are becoming much simpler and now anybody can do it, so there will be less competition and you will need to hire less people. But it was completely opposite. The market needed you to actually hire more people, because now there is a more demand, there are more softwares, there are more complex things. And if you see, Midjourney has started a medical company, so there are going to be a lot of different domains that are going to get unlocked. Let's say the medical, I think the industry is going to be the good one, the space industry, the robotics industry, the manufacturing industry, the food industry, the agriculture industry. So everything is still untapped, you can say. And what's happening at the moment is only the software engineering market is getting tapped, but once everything else gets tapped, there will be hundreds of companies who will need people who understand the fundamentals of system. And for that to be ready, I think you need to be the AI product engineer. And then in order for you to be AI product engineer, you kind of need to understand all of these things, right? Now, the evals and reliability engineer is going to be another post, you can say. Even if you search about it today, there are going to be jobs that you can actually have. That you can actually apply for. So if you search about evals engineer, this is open posting in OpenAI, and what it is about is that designing the eval pipelines that are reliable, reproducible, and then extendable, right? Eval monitoring frameworks. So now people are looking at all of these AI frameworks as also the framework in itself, like React framework. They are able to now formalize it, kind of. Now, if you are going to apply for the job at OpenAI, the prompt engineering is not going to be enough for you. You need to know and understand how the eval works, right? So you maybe can apply for this job. And there are going to be other roles as well. So AI product engineer is first one, the second is evals and reliability engineer, the third one is going to be the workflow architect. Workflow architect is basically this is the role that is going to collaborate across different areas such as product, right? The evals, inference, engine, infrastructure, tools, memories, deployments. So if you see the job posting that we just looked at, right, it is just the minor part of this whole system, right? It is just evals. Then there are going to be people who are going to be just very good at memory, right? Just like we had database people, they are going to be very good at memory. And then people who are very good at maybe building the tools and specs. Most probably specs are going to be the product people who transition into engineering, or maybe engineering people who transition into this role of which requires you to have the product knowledge, right? And then the other models, the other jobs are going to be about inference engineering. Inference engineering, you can basically say that if you deploy your model onto the GPUs that you yourself own, how do you actually have a very low latency? How do you have the better accuracy? And if you ever have to train it with your own specific data, let's say that you want it to be trained on your own set of images or videos or data, then how do you train it, right? And how do you train it optimally? So that the job is going to be about inference engineering. There are very good books about it. So if you go on my Twitter, you can actually get this link and then try to read this book, Inference Engineering. Then they are going to be vertical AI specialist, which basically means that we talked about how Midjourney went from just creating the video generation to now getting into medical, right? Which basically means that there is going to be a vertical, which are going to be the AI specialist people who go in different industries and then try to tap AI into their systems, which can be that AI insurance company open their job posting, which is specifically going to be about vertical AI specialists who are going to hire people who can help them understand how to integrate AI into their system, how they can build the AI that is going to be specifically helpful about their system to, I don't know, to maybe sell more insurance or to manage more insurance, right? Now, synthetic data and curation engineer. One thing I want to talk about is that I think, let me clarify why I think evals, the data cleaning, integration, the training, all of these things are important, but the evaluations are like really, really important, because if you look at this post is by the senior staff engineer at Tesla. And then he mentions that 50% of the ML projects are basically evaluations, and then 40% is data cleansing, which basically means 90% of the time is actually spent on understanding the domain, writing down the golden data set by writing down your own good examples of what the model should do, and then building out the evaluation models on the top of it. Evaluation model basically means that when you run your application, it is going to give you response. Is that response good or bad? And then you can also maybe somehow try to clarify that what does good mean and what does bad mean. Is this good at accuracy? Is this good at giving good response as a salesman, right? Is it able to not hallucinate the data, and is it able to, let's say, highlight the problem to humans properly whenever AI agent itself is not able to resolve it, right? Or it tries to hallucinate and make up the problem. For Tesla, I think it is much more important because they don't want their cars crashing. So their evaluation result might look like when they introduce a new model, let's say, is their car still able to perform nicely in their simulation, or does it do wrong turns more now? And what they would want to see is that evaluation stays same or get better. So that is how they're able to maybe release the new models, right? So they need evaluations and they need data cleansing. So don't just look at how to use the prompt that you use in your cloud code or OpenAI Codex, right? Try to learn how this the system itself works, because there are going to be more and more jobs about how do you actually build AI first companies than just normal softwares in the future. The AI safety and governance operator, this job, I think it's a bit unclear that how this guy is going to perform. But if you ever have to imagine now with Fable 5, right, Anthropic, now there are a lot of problems because Fable 5 is able to, I think now there are news that it was able to hijack into some of the government stuff, and that is what government don't want to do. And then Amazon researchers, they did some research and they were also able to jailbreak it, which basically means that they were able to ask it to do some stuff that government wouldn't want you to do, which could be related to maybe some weapons or something, right? So you need AI safety engineers who are able to actually do the governance on the top of your models. Try to imagine that you are the image generation company, but rather than trying to generate the images for the forms or for the shoes that you are selling, it starts generating images randomly, which you don't want your customer to see. So for that you need AI safety. If let's say it starts to tell some things to customer, and as an insurance operator, which you don't want it to tell. So for all of those things, you need the AI safety and governance operator to be on the top of it. And most probably, this is going to be the must rule. This is going to be the guy who is maybe the AI first product engineer, or who maybe understand the most about inference engineering, or who maybe want to understand the most about the memory itself. And they will be able to go and talk about AI safety. But if you are ever going to get hired, there will be questions asked about it. So try to be prepared for it, right? The human interaction designer is going to be somebody who maybe understand how how you are able to, let's say, build a good chat, right? If you look at talk to ChatGPT, right, you maybe are able to get a good response, but if you go and ask same thing to Gemini, it will give you the 100 different paragraphs, and you don't want to read that, right? How the ChatGPT is able to do it? Because they understand and they have the design intuition. So those design intuition is what I think is going to be called a designer in the AI role. So human AI interaction designer is going to be the role in the future. And then the way for you to learn how to do that is by just writing down a boot spec of what the ChatGPT should do, what the models should do, right? The robotics, I think people are still exploring how to get into robotics and physical AI engineer. But if you are already into robotics, you can imagine that there will be more and more companies in the robotics who want to integrate AI into their systems, right? And the AI transformation lead, who is going to basically make sure that this guy is going to design the process and then able to, let's say, do all of these things in the company, right? So he will probably need to know about inference engineering, harness engineering, evals, observability, prompts, memory, etc. So this job is going to be a little bit more complex in nature, right? Now, one thing I would tell you is that to end this video, let's talk about who the original thinkers are, right? At the time of typewriter, when I think the computers came in, most of the typewriters would have thought that now their jobs are in danger. But then there would have been some typewriter who would have started that media company at that time. They maybe would have started a good digital magazine, or maybe a good digital video company, right? Where they are now able to sell the thing, use the creativity that they had, but now they are selling it digitally, right? I think the same thing is what's going to happen. There are going to be people who will complain and say that, okay, there are going to be no more AI roles or no more jobs in the market, and everybody is going to, let's say, just use AI to build out things. They are in this category. Then I would say they are just able to not understand the whole system and whole picture, and they are just using AI as a prompt system to build out things. But the people who are going to understand how everything works behind the scenes, they maybe are able to create the best video generation company or image generation company or text generation company, right? So there are a lot of AI rules that are going to come out of this layer of system. And if you want to be original thinker, try to learn how the GPT actually itself works, and how the mid journey is able to create and generate more and more images and videos with a higher quality, because that is what's going to get you hired at maybe Twitter or maybe OpenAI or maybe Anthropic. They would hire you if you know how their system works beforehand, and because then you probably are able to work on their successor version, right? So try to start and learn how the models actually work, and then try to learn and build the application layer on the top of it. Most of these platforms are very cheap, like you can run OpenRouter, and then it is like you can just get a lot of tokens in $10 only, and then you can deploy all of these things on Vercel, basically, and you can actually run and build your own applications. So when you talk to your ChatGPT, try to talk it with this version. Try to tell it that you not only want to develop the application, but you want to understand how the memory is going to work, how the tools are going to work, how the prompts are going to work, how the evals are going to work, and what kind of evals do I need to write. Try to create a code and data set for that, and then once you start and run the application, then how the observability works on the top of it. For observability, just start with the simple application of brain trust, where you will be able to not only run the evals, but you will be able to observe your system, the AI system, and it will tell you that what was the request that was sent to your system, and then what was the response that was received from the ChatGPT or any other model. So yeah, this is what I would say. So try to be the original thinker in the world of vibe coders, and then you might be able to, let's say, hopefully get a good job or start a new company who is going to solve one of these problems. So thanks a lot for watching this video. I'm going to write down the link of this in the YouTube description, so you can go ahead and read it, and send me a message on Twitter if you would like to connect. Do subscribe for the next set of videos, because I'm probably going to write down a series on how the evals work, how the harness engineering works, and then we'll try to maybe go and read some of the research papers as well. Thank you.